welcome to another episode of Best Books, an Orchard Hill podcast that helps you choose your next book. My name is Jonathan Thiede, and I'm your host. And with me today, I'm delighted to have our first ever Best Books back-to-back guest, Josh Thomas. Josh, how's it going?
We are doing A-okay, but let's not make a habit out of this. Here we go. No, just kidding. This is great. Thanks for, we're going to flip things today, as you are normally the one asking the guest. Today, you are the guest, because we wanted to pick your brain and say, like, hey, let's give Jonathan the chance to say, what is in your brain as your best book?
I finally get to give my best book.
Exactly.
Which feels like an injustice 3 years in the making.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Very
thank
cool.
you. I appreciate that.
So this is fun.
I've worked it out. Maybe another 30 episodes from now, I can do
there.
another one. But, yeah.
Of what's around. But before we talk about the book, because I know on this show you like to peer into the mind of the guest a little bit and have a little bit of a fun, topical, off topic from the material. All right. So you are an aficionado of the musical genre.
Yeah.
If you could
Guilty.
If you could place yourself in the role of any character in any musical, who would it be and why?
Oh, man, that's a good question.
You have I did not set you up for this.
Yeah.
This is coming off cold.
Yeah.
There's a wide range of possibilities.
Yeah.
Who and where and why?
Yeah, so some of my favorite musicals are more of the modern ones, Hamilton and The Heights, really anything Lin-Manuel Miranda does. But I recently saw the Wicked movies, which were really great. I was kind of skeptical because I'd never seen a stage production. I think the movies honestly kind of spoiled me. I'm worried I'm going to see a stage production one day that's going to be like, man, there's just something movies can do that obviously has limitations being on stage. But I would say my favorite musical... maybe not my favorite musical. The one, to answer your question, would be a musical called Something Rotten, because it takes place in the 1500s, so during the Renaissance.
Okay.
And the whole premise of the musical is it's a musical about musicals. It's very meta. It's like it's during Shakespeare's time, and so Shakespeare is basically just a really pompous jerk, and he's super famous. He's supposed to just mock every living celebrity. He's just like he just thinks that he's so great. Yeah. And there's a lesser known playwright that's the main character, and so he has to deal with jealousy towards Shakespeare. And he goes and sees like a soothsayer, which is in that time very controversial because they were kind of known as like a medium or a spiritist and that kind of thing. Yeah. And he looks into the future and he sees that the next big thing are these things called musicals. And so there's a lot of just irony of like the protagonist being like, people actually like this? What could they like? And then the very next line, he's singing. So it's just like this irony of like, why would an audience actually like it? So the audience gets to kind of play a part of it.
And
so,
know more. Clever.
Are we talking about what I would like to play or who I would like to actually be?
No,
fiction?
like if you. Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah, it's a good distinction.
Go ahead, give us both.
Okay, I would love to play Shakespeare. Shakespeare is just this like. He's just like, woe is me. It's hard being famous. Everyone wants my autograph. It's so exhausting. And there's just like a lot of irony there where it's just like, okay, the audience is in on the joke of like, you're very privileged and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't think I would like to be Shakespeare. I might actually, because actually in the musical he does not learn a lesson, and he gets to still be Shakespeare because it wouldn't make any sense if he was like vanquished or something. It's like then
he never existed.
Yeah, you're playing that kind of thing. So I think both actually. Yeah, Shakespeare he's the guy that plays him in the original production. Christian Boyle is like just he's just gifted for that role. He's really funny.
Right on. They were the casting department like nice job.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
what would you say?
So in our trip to Disney, I was disappointed that on the day we went that he was not around. But I gotta love the Gaston character.
Yeah.
And just how
honestly similar energy.
Right. When you super pompous, super over the top, like the crowd in on the joke type of a thing. And that I just think that would be super fun to be him and just putz around and be ridiculous, and people just like, sure, go for it. Yeah.
I can't count how many times I've watched just the Gaston clip on YouTube of just like his in the movie that is like it's just incredible. And when they remade it, I just thought they did such a good job with that song. It's just such a it's a much needed injection of just like comedy,
and keeping it going.
Such a serious kind of tone movie. So.
Yeah, bouncing in. All right, so off of ridiculousness, back into seriousness,
Sure.
and why we're here today.
Mm-hmm.
What is this tome in front of us, and how did it enter your life? What point in time in your life did it enter? Why does this mean so much to you? Go. The information dump to us.
Yeah, so for the YouTube audience, Josh is referencing this book in front of us that looks like it was written during the time of Christ. And it was not. It was probably written maybe close to 100 years ago, to be honest. It's a pretty old book, but it's by a guy named Paul Maier. The more I think, you ever say something and then you're like, there's no way that's true. Okay, no way it's 100 years old, maybe 50 years old.
68.
Yeah.
I looked inside the
cover.
cover.
Oh, 1968.
Right.
Okay, cool. So way off. But it looks like it could be 100 years old. I'm sorry for our podcast listeners. This is not a helpful part. But the reason it is so old is because I bought it when I was in seminary for a seminary class.
Okay.
And when you're in seminary, just to get people behind, like, it's the irony that I host this podcast for our church because I wanted to do this because I'm not much of a natural reader. And so me going to seminary was like a challenge. Like, I studied accounting. I was really good at math my whole life. And so I had this fear of like, oh my gosh, this is just going to be so much reading.
Yeah.
And so I was pleasantly surprised when I ordered this book on Amazon. It was like a very, very used book from someone else's library. And had no idea that it was a historical fiction book, and it was a category breaker for seminary. Obviously, I think might have been the first and only fiction book we read during the whole time. But the reason I like it so much is because I think of how much I learned through it. Like once you read it, you're like, I totally get why a seminary professor would want you to experience it. Yeah, it was a class called New Testament 1, and so we're walking through really just the Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And the whole idea of the book is it's supposed to give you the Roman background of the time of Jesus. And we were talking a little bit before we shot, but like, I have walked away with a richer understanding of the New Testament because of it. Because now when I read the New Testament and I see Rome, I understand the significance of that.
Sure.
And we can explain that in preaching and in sermons and stuff, but I think it's just it's very immersive to read the story, to see what it would have been like to be Pilate and hear about this rabbi who was making waves.
This guy's coming up.
And you get the idea of like, oh, why would the governor care about that? You get the idea of when Jesus comes before Pilate, I can understand why he would be skeptical. This is, speaking of category breakers, that's who Jesus was, and so, Pilate has just some really funny lines, very musical oriented, where he's like, there's this rabbi named Jesus, and people were saying he's the Messiah, and he says something like, well, throw him on the list of all the other failed messiahs, right?
Sure.
Because he's been through it. He's been the governor for a decade by the time Jesus shows up, and so he has kind of this been there, done that sort of attitude, and so I really like it first and foremost because now when I read the New Testament, when I read really the Gospels, I understand this conflict that goes on between the Jews and the Romans. Jews are like, hey, we serve one God, you're not our God, we don't hail Caesar. And the Romans are like, well, you're going to need to at least put on a show or we're going to kill you.
Get on board. Here's reality, buddies.
So just a really interesting book. And the reason I wanted to do it, the reason I've always wanted to put this on Best Books is because I think specifically around the Lent season, we don't know when people are going to be listening to this, but if Lent is coming up in your parallel universe, I just think this is a great read because it gives you a sense of you feel like you're walking with Jesus toward the cross. And so the book kind of picks up on when Jesus got on the scene, but it really, much like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the narrative really slows down in the last week of Jesus' life.
Gotcha.
And then you have about 100 pages afterward where Pilate is wrestling with like,
who was that guy?
Yeah, who was that guy? Did I make the right choice? And I find that really gripping. When we look at the New Testament, Jesus is one of the least interesting characters, to be honest. Jesus, how could he not be? He does everything well. He's perfect, But in Pilate, I like his introduction because you do see, you give yourself that question of like, am I so certain that if I were in Pilate's shoes that I would choose correctly? Would the people pleaser in me come out and say, well, these people really want to kill this guy? And if my bosses in Rome find out, I'm going to lose my
What is this
promotion. Like it's just a very, I think, real Pilate's someone you can relate to a lot more than Jesus, really. You know, I mean, as sad as that is, but that's just a reality of living in a broken world.
And as any human, you have to come to a decision in your life where you have to decide, is Jesus the real deal or not? So it kind of makes this question, the scenario brought up in the book. I'm assuming in the book, I didn't read it, but is something that everybody sort of has to deal with at the same time.
Yeah, very much a mirror of John at the end of his gospel. He kind of has a moment where in John chapter 20, I think it is, he basically sets aside the parchment and he's like looking at you, the reader. He's like, hey, I've laid out 7 miracles for you, and including the greatest miracle, which is the resurrection. And so, dear reader, what do you say? Do you I write these things to you so that you may believe that Jesus is the Son of God? That's the line. And I think Paul Maier does a good job of that as well, where he probably doesn't even need to say that. I mean, it's implicit that his faith comes through in that of like, man, all this evidence, are you going to be like Pilate? Are you going to just say, well, all these things are coincidental? Are you going to be skeptical, as Pilate often is? Or are you going to respond as so many in the book do? I think it's cool that he highlights Jesus' followers and how, if you read this book, following Jesus seems very logical. It's like, why would I not follow this guy who did things that had never been done?
That has been that impressive in the crowd in the day of where it was. Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. Now, the author here, have you read anything else that he's produced and output?
No idea. Yeah. This is the only thing I've read from him. From what I understand, he's big in the historical fiction world, and so through Orchard Hill, I've met quite a few people who love historical fiction, and I've recommended this book to
pointed
them.
people to them, and they have turned back around and said, like, that was great. That was a good time.
A lot of people have read it just because the historical fiction world isn't huge. You know, I mean, it's kind of it's niche. You know, it's people who love history, people who love fiction. You know, sometimes the Venn diagram in the middle of that is very slim. But he does. I mean, that's a great kind of point to go with it, because at the beginning of the book, he has a lot to say about how he wrote the book. He talks about the confidence level you should have that these things actually happened. Some of the things he acknowledges, he takes liberty, as any historical fiction writer does. But he talks about like, every person I've given a proper name to really did exist. And so that helps you as you read, because Pilate's wife is this woman named Procula. And if you do a little bit of research, this is just the nerd in me, but you read the book and then you find out like, oh, she's honored as a believer in the Catholic Church. And that's a really honored as a saint, I think, even, because she was kind of the influence on Pilate of like, you know, you read that in the New Testament where she's like, I had a dream. Don't crucify this man.
Hang on.
She was the person who, and Pilate there, the whole book is like, well, you're just a fanatic, you know, that kind of thing.
Don't know what you're talking about.
but all that to say, I mean, I really love, he clearly does his research. I mean, this isn't just like, if I were to write a historical fiction, it would be a lot on the fiction side.
Just like I was in the shower and the thought came into me. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that.
Yeah. What if Jesus was a magician or something like that? You know, I mean, that's easier to write because you don't have to do your research. But I admire him for that.
And to hear that you spoke briefly about this right there. Do you yourself ever have an inspiration of authoring a book?
I'd be lying if I said no.
When did that start? How did you? When did you first feel that little nudge?
Yeah.
What was it, like 4th grade, or was it like?
Yeah, it was. I think it was shortly after getting into ministry, and just every once in a while you read about people, you deal with people, and I wouldn't be interested in fiction per se, but just a book that could really help the church.
Yeah.
I have to. The reason I haven't is because I hold it in tension with the fact that there are so many books out there. I think Best Books is a product of that, and so if I died without writing a book, I would die very happy.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be totally. And when I meet other people who have written books, they don't say that. They're like, I had this message that I needed. And so I feel like in my personal life, I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for something so big, so monumental that I'm like, this has not been written about. This is a gap in the church, and this could really help people. Because I don't want to write a book that 10 people are going to read. Like it's
your mom would be like, cool, thanks, cool, mom, neat.
Right. The more you dig into the publishing world and all it takes to write a book, in the Christian world and the nonfiction world, where it's like you get to the end of some of these books and it's like, you read 50 books in order to write one? Like that just, to me, that doesn't feel worth it right now. But who knows when I'm 50 years old and I have, I won't have more time on my hands, but I'll be probably more interested in this kind of stuff. But great question. Yeah, I think a lot of people who are geared toward ministry and kind of a callback to our last episode, being a yellow listeners will understand what that means. Just that arrogance of like, I could say it better.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do read a book and you're like, man, this is very scholarly. This is very academic. I'd love to bring this to the masses because some of the ideas are really important. I can't hand this book to someone though.
Somebody else.
They won't understand the academic language, all that stuff.
You were so close.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, you got 80% cool, and there's just that other 20% that just keeps it impossible for the general public to comprehend and hear out there. Yeah, nice. So you give it. Let's roll back a little bit more.
Sure.
You, who you are, and what is going on in your life right now. That 2026 February.
Sure.
Give us a snapshot of Jonathan Thiede.
Yeah, great question. So I came on staff 3 years ago. Been in ministry for about a decade. Took a break from ministry in order to move to Pittsburgh to pursue my wife. We were on a dating app and doing long distance. And so moved to Pittsburgh. I have a degree in accounting, so I got to take a break and use that for a few years. Really enjoyed my time back in accounting, but there's always this nagging sense that ministry was going to be my future. I really felt like God had called me to that. And honestly, we got married, and within a few months, this position at Orchard Hill came available. And I'd always admired Orchard Hill from afar. I didn't attend here, but when Bethany and I were looking for churches, we were in the city, and so we were kind of hamstrung by that. Yeah. But I remember when we were researching churches, her parents lived very close to the church, and so it was just one where, you're in ministry, you kind of Google things. Okay, what is this church like? And for years, I'd admired Orchard Hill specifically because of their statement of faith. A lot of churches, their statement of faith is just very vanilla, very much like, oh, this is just the Westminster Catechism kind of
generic
with more modern language,
keeping it together.
Yeah, I really felt like Orchard Hills. I mean this as a compliment. The statement of faith felt like it was written by a person. Like it felt like it was like the language is very specific, very much like this is what makes Orchard Hill different from some of the churches in the area. And I just thought, that speaks something, implicitly. That speaks that we care about doctrine, we care about theology. But as I dug deeper into the church, it was like the holding intention of real people, because real people. I'm the weirdo that's going to watch this or read the statement of faith. Yeah. Most people in Wexford don't care about that, And so I loved that tension of like, I'd been at churches that were a little bit more like doctrinally focused, but in my opinion, just didn't do big events, didn't do things to invite the community. And so I loved that tension, and I love just what Orchard Hill stands for. And so I thought that was a good fit. Specifically, I've been leading our young adult ministry for the past 3 years. I would say it has turned over in the past year and a half, which has been a really cool thing to see.
Yeah.
When I started, everyone was around my age. I started when I was 28. Yeah. And the average age is probably 26, 27. We had some people older than me, so most people, just a year or two younger than me. About a year and a half ago, we had this huge influx of people who were frankly more our target demographic. Yeah. We love people in the 28, 29 range, but really we exist to feed people who are in college and after college and post-grad kind of thing. And so we just had this huge influx. God really brought so many people. And honestly, I tell this story all the time, but it really started happening when I stopped stressing so much. I had this moment where, for about a year and a half, I just felt like, God, look at all I'm doing. And I just felt very frustrated working in the flesh. And I just felt like God was challenging me, I'm doing so much by myself. And so that led me to investing more in our leaders, putting more on their plate, being less of a people pleaser, and being like, it's okay for, for things to be stressful for a time. And so I think just, it's been really, really neat to see not only the growth and the quote unquote success of the ministry, but also that's coincided with just God teaching me. And honestly, if I could only have one, I would take those lessons, because I think that's going to serve me well 20 years from now, where I'm like, hey, remember that time where you just let go a little bit
Yeah.
and stopped stressing so much, and God really blessed it
Yeah,
because
there was trust there,
Yeah.
and on that side, and you
Yeah.
said, "Okay, God, this is yours. This isn't mine.
yeah, exactly. I'm a manager.
I'm okay to
yeah,
see what you want to do with this."
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Are you
100%.
you in a little bit earlier? You stated an interesting little thing about attention,
Yeah.
and that other places don't pay super well attention, maybe, to some
Sure.
of these written statements.
Yeah.
As a host of a book reading podcast, yet we are creating content that can be listened to and watched. Do you see a problem of the future generations and their literacy and the importance of the written word? Maybe this is a technology sort of side of answer.
Yeah.
Or is it kind of like, oh my gosh, email is out, no one's going to use paper anymore, type
Right,
of thing.
right.
Oh, clearly we have not stopped using paper.
Yeah.
Have you ever played with ideas of that in your head
Yeah.
as to what recommendation would you give to a 10-year-old?
Yeah.
Here's where you think the future is. Give us a...
Yeah, I'd love to just couch this firmly in the fact that it is my opinion.
Yeah.
This is not the stance of the church. This is
Certainly.
certainly not God's word.
Certainly.
This is straight from Jonathan. I really do think it's a problem, and I've been on a journey the past 3 years, just like unhitching myself from what I would just call dopamine addiction. I mean,
Sure.
I think that language is getting more and more common. Over the past month, actually, my wife and I just finished a month where we have this app called Brick, and so it basically makes your phone stupid, and you can't get on certain apps. And the beauty of it is you get to pick.
Gotcha.
So you get to say, for me personally, I'm extremely addicted to YouTube.
Sure.
And so I was off YouTube for a full month, and just to see what that would do to my brain.
Yeah.
For my wife, it was TikTok. For me, TikTok is not a temptation. I would never
spend time
download
there.
it. It's just not. It's not
Sure.
for me. YouTube. It's a different flavor, same thing.
Yeah.
It's all dopamine. It's all I need to be constantly distracted and entertained. And I would probably use that word entertain more than distracted. I think distracted has a negative connotation, but we live in an environment where boredom is kind of the enemy, and I think you lose something in your brain when you can't allow yourself to be bored. It is a little bit. If I'm being really harsh, I would say it's a bit of a pacifier that we use. We just have no capacity for boredom, no capacity for not being entertained. And so, boom, put your pacifier in. And so there's something to that, right? I think I think to pull biblical wisdom in, just anytime I'm controlled by something, I'm ruled or dominated by that thing. It's really the same language we use around addiction, though the consequences are significantly less severe. I'm not going to act like dopamine can ruin your life in quite the same way a drug could. But at the same time, I think as Christians, we are called to not be dominated and to be very critical of those things. I've had similar thoughts around caffeine. Is it a problem that I am almost a different person when I've had coffee versus not? That kind of thing. So I'm still on the journey. I'm not going to act like I've arrived, but that I think has a lot implicitly to say about the written word and how valuable that is. And I think what's wonderful is you are starting to see the value of audiobooks. I think audiobooks for me, I would not put that in that same category of dopamine.
Gotcha.
I think audiobooks are a really convenient way to access and to, especially if you have a long commute or something like that. For some people, just like it's taxing to read. It's hard on your brain, whereas to listen to an audiobook. And so I think that's what I want to balance this with. For me, I'm not an audiobook person. I love the written word. I think it's really done wonders
the tangibleness of holding it.
Yeah, and it's helped my attention span, I think, to be able to have a book, put your phone in do not disturb mode, don't get calls, don't get notifications. You can check when you do that, that means you can check the time, you know, and so but you're not going to see things on your lock screen. So I'm an unashamed advocate of that, and even in our small group, we talk about that sometimes with young adults. It's just, it's amazing to me how many people can identify, oh, that's a problem for me. That's a problem in my life, and yet be unwilling to eradicate that. And so I think I think that's just the process going from being in your 20s to being in your 30s. You start to ask those questions of like, man, is this, I can recognize this is something, but is this something a problem? And so I think for me, it's like I want to be someone who can pay attention for long stretches. I want to be someone who, when I'm on a date with my wife, I'm not.
Right, you're
I'm
present.
Not, yeah. And for me, it was like checking sports scores and stuff like. So it's just amazing how a month without YouTube, you see how dopamine goes to other things, and it's like, okay, I'm no longer spending time on YouTube, but now I'm like on Discord, and now I'm on my CBS Sports app,
Here
and
it is, pull
but
this in.
it's all really the same thing, you know. It's this need to be thinking about something, you know, and so I think that impacts our prayer life. I think there's just a lot of different ways that I hope to start seeing the fruit of that, and I think I've started to see it in little doses.
And it's interesting in the last couple years. For me, I think the only place where I've seen someone else read a book has been like on an airplane.
Right.
You know, where you're like, oh, we're already locked in this one thing, and their phone battery died, so they don't have any, you know, and it's maybe 6 people out of the 100 that I can look around, and everybody else is either on the screen, in the thing.
Right.
You know, and you're like, okay, it is the physical medium of a book.
Right.
You know, what does that do to your brain when you don't have that, when you say, this is something that stops and starts based on your environment. You're not missing out.
Right.
It behaves differently. You behave differently in interacting with it.
Yeah, definitely.
And
I'd also like to couch it in the fact that I'm a bit of a romantic with physical books. You know,
Sure.
I mean, I have a Kindle, but I think the more that I use my Kindle, the more I just love having a paper book. I totally understand why people would disagree, but I want to give an accurate representation of myself, and just to confess that I still spend way more time on my phone than I do reading books. You know, and so, but I think with that being said, I think I still would advocate for if going back to the example of a 10-year-old, like my dad wanted me to read when I was a kid, when I was bored and that kind of thing, and I think I lost something by not doing that. I love video games, still play, but I think every once in a while, the more inundated with dopamine in that way I get, my brain kind of craves, okay, let's read a book, let's really earn
back
this
here. That special time, and keeping it together. And one nice thing with the physicality of the written word versus a digital experience, you can tell me, hey, you should watch this YouTube clip, hey, you should listen to this podcast, hey, you should do that, versus physically handing me something that I have to deal with, and it's in my flat out, literally in my face of ownership. And even, I got to get that back to Jonathan. I get it. I didn't really read that. I didn't have it. It's almost like in 2026, if somebody made you a mixtape, you would definitely want to, the amount of effort that went into making like a mixtape, you're like, I definitely want to listen to this to see what's on there, versus something
more impactful.
Listen to my Spotify playlist that I made for you. You're like, cool, you did that in 1 second. Like, what the level of effort coming back and saying like, oh no, this does have value. This is a higher value than just a quick, immediate download. So deal with it. So it's almost like, we would get to know each other better through the harder, more difficult experience of saying, no, did you actually spend time here? Yeah.
Right.
And why groups at Orchard Hill that go through written materials stick together and are much more cohesive than just the like, hey, did you check that Zoom link? Not to squash our Zoom, groups or anything, but I think there really is something more real about this type of technology than just the click and listen and headphones in type of a thing. Right. Yeah. So, John, is there anything as we wrap up here, anything else you want to say about this book in particular?
Oh, unfortunately for our time, I could go on for hours about this book, to be honest. I'll just say very quickly, one of the most interesting aspects of this book is that, as the title Pontius Pilate suggests, Pontius Pilate is the main character, and I would argue Jesus is not. And that might make you uncomfortable if that's not what you're expecting. what I love about this book is that you get the sense of what it's like to live in that time.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is you get the sense of what it would have been like to hear about Jesus through word of mouth. Oh, there's this rabbi. Oh, he did this miracle. Oh, he did this thing. Because you get a flavor of what it would have been like to be alive back then.
Yeah.
You know, there was no Instagram. There was no social media. Sounds so old saying that, but there was no internet, and so you heard about things through other people.
Yeah.
And so you get a sense of what it would have been like for Pilate to hear about this rabbi who's doing these miracles. But I love the intentionality that the writer does. He's just a master in picking his spots. And it's one of those books you just get goosebumps every time Jesus shows up because it is so impactful.
Yeah.
Because Jesus is not on every page of scripture. If you don't like historical fiction, maybe don't read this because for the first 100 pages, you're just learning about Pilate in Rome and how he even got to Judea and who his boss is and why that matters. And it all comes to play later on. It's all significant. There's a really great point in the book where everything flips, and I'm not going to give that away.
Sure.
But I love that until 150 pages in, Jesus is not mentioned by name even once. You learn about what a rabbi is. You learn about how they're kind of a thorn in Pilate's side, and then oh, by the way, this Jesus of Nazareth is his name. That's like the way a chapter ends, and it feels like a mic drop.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I'll say about this book, kind of similarly, I mentioned early on that so you have Pilate's experience with Jesus, but positively speaking, because Pilate, spoiler alert, I mean you probably know this through history, Pilate never becomes a Christian, but many people, even people that worked for Pilate, did. There's this guy named Cornelius who's a big part of the early church. And again, I love that Paul Maier did his research because he's able to trace that and say, okay, who was this Cornelius guy? He actually was a centurion under Pilate, and he would have known Pilate by name. They would have been on a very casual basis. And so there's this really gripping. The way the book ends is he catches up with Cornelius a decade after Jesus dies, and he says, I'm just getting goosebumps thinking about it. Pilate is just so incredulous, just like, how can you, a Roman, a smart person, how could you be among these people who are following Jesus? And the deeper question, the more interesting question is, how can you be my friend? You I'm Pilate. I'm the person who put him to death. I'm the bad guy in your world. And Cornelius just uses that to share the gospel. He's just like, a big part of this rabbi's teachings was to love your enemies. Was to the reason he died was so that you could know God. You know, so he's sharing the gospel with the very man who put Jesus to death. And so I just think like if the gospel warms your heart, it's. Again, you can share the gospel in 30 seconds, but I think it being this drawn out really hammers home. Knowing Pilate over the course of hundreds of pages, knowing how undeserving he is of grace, knowing how skeptical he is, and yet Cornelius is like, yeah, you put my Lord to death, but he did it.
That was
you actually didn't. And Pilate's a little offended by that. It's like, you actually didn't put him to death. He chose to die. You know.
Yeah.
And so I find that to be the most gratifying aspect of reading the book is just the reminder of, okay, we are all Pilate, and yet even for God's greatest enemies, he draws us in and welcomes us home.
Right. That sounds pretty cool. Right.
Yeah.
Pretty cool way of wrapping up. And sounds like there's, even for somebody who's slightly interested, there's a ton of stuff to think about inside of this to keep you interested for quite a while.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Well, thanks so much, Josh, for coming on. I really enjoyed talking your ear off about a book that I really enjoy. Hopefully more people will find this book. If you liked this episode, be sure to share it with a friend. That's going to really help this content get into more and more people's hands. If you really like this episode, be sure to subscribe to Orchard Hill Plus wherever you get podcasts. This is going to help more people find it and more people accomplish our goal of helping people find and follow Jesus Christ. Join us next time as we talk about more books that will help us on our spiritual journey. Until next time, my name is Jonathan Thiede, and this has been Best Books.